What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins in Depth podcast. I'm Daniel Yafisi.
I'm
That
David Neal.
is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are back after a little sabbatical end of the season. We took a little break, but we're back for Super Bowl week to talk all things Dolphins with a little bit of Super Bowl sprinkled in. As you can tell from my surroundings, I am not in South Florida. I am in Phoenix right now to cover everything going on in Super Bowl week and the Super Bowl on Sunday night at State Farm Stadium. We got a lot to get into, but before we start, as always, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, all that good stuff.
Subscribe to the Miami Herald.
As
Okay.
always,
Read
you always
read
always
read
remind
his
me. You always
stuff.
throw
You
that
can
in
read
there.
my stuff. You can read about the Dolphins hiring a new defensive coordinator. You can read about Vontae Davis getting arrested. You can read about, you know, gangs trying to rob son of a couple of, BSO and Fort Lauderdale police employees because for his marijuana stash and going to federal prison for it. You know, you can read about them firing their offensive line coordinator or who they're going to get, to play linebacker or cornerback. You can
We
get
got
all
it all.
that. Subscribe to the Miami Herald.
We got it all. And you kind of teased what we were gonna start off with. It's hasn't been that quiet for the Dolphins since their season ended a couple of weeks ago. They are reshaping coaching staff, getting ready to reshape the roster with free agency set to start in about a month. But first things first, we got to talk about some of the biggest news since the season ended. The biggest coaching change that Mike McDaniel made. It's actually been a year since he was hired as head coach of the Dolphins, but he made a big move to fire defensive coordinator Josh Boyer. Josh Boyer was obviously the biggest holdover from the Brian Flores, I guess, regime. He, started off as cornerbacks coach, was elevated to defensive coordinator, had been in that role for the past 3 seasons. We all know we've talked about the struggles that the defense faced. A lot of it was because of injuries, a lot of it was self-inflicted, a lot of, just regression and really, less than expected performances this season. So Mike McDaniel decides to part ways. In the coming days after that news came out, we heard about a number of coordinators that the Dolphins were interviewing for that vacancy. The biggest name, Vic Fangio, longtime defensive coordinator, has actually been spending this season as a defensive consultant for the Eagles. He was among those interviewees. Is that right? Interviewees?
Interviewees.
Interviewees. Thank you. Hey, that's why I'm a writer, not an editor. And news broke out about the news broke out about a week ago that the team had agreed to terms with Vic Fangio. A lot of excitement in South Florida, but not too long after that, and it was also confirmed by the Miami Herald that the team had agreed to terms to bring Vic Fangio in as defensive coordinator. Obviously, not too long after that, he told some reporters in Denver, some reporters in San Francisco, that no deal had been finalized, and that kind of sent a lot of fans down here, I guess down in Miami. And so a little bit of a concern, confusion, a lot of mixed emotions. Later on, ESPN reported that Vic Fangio has indeed decided to accept the Dolphins position, but after the Super Bowl, and he is set to join the staff. So we had a lot. We had a lot going on the past 2 weeks. Is Vic Fangio coming? Is he not? It looks like he is. I'm not gonna lie. I was looking for Vic Fangio at opening night at the Footprint Center, the little multi-purpose big arena that they have. I was looking for him. Could not find him. But I spoke to defensive coordinator Jonathan Gannon about Vic Fangio, and he spoke very highly of him. So by all accounts, it seems like this is a smash hit for the Dolphins. He's been a long time. Like I said, he's been a long time defensive coordinator in the NFL. A lot of his principles and philosophies have been adopted by his proteges and his mentees, and they've kind of sprouted across the NFL. And it really, marks a philosophical change. I mean, we're so used to this Dolphins defense blitzing and sending extra rushers and leaving the cornerbacks on an island. And I feel like it's going to be a lot different with Vic Fangio. I mean, he plays a lot more zone. Keeps a lot of his guys back, doesn't blitz as much, nearly as much as Flores or Josh Boyer did. And it seems like on paper it's a good move. I mean, we talked, the entire season about, how this is a passing league, how you got to be dynamic on offense, and it seems like this approach has been pretty successful in kind of stymieing these explosive passing offenses where you put a lot more guys in coverage. You hope that you can get to the quarterback with four, maybe five, but put most of your guys in coverage and not have to play that man coverage, at a very, very high rate. I mean, the Dolphins, like, they lived in man coverage. That's all they did. And I think it really backfired on them, obviously, with Byron Jones being out, Xavier Howard being injured, some other injuries to the secondary really bit them. They weren't able to adjust. I think with Vic Fangio coming along, I mean, I don't think it's going to be like an overnight kind of 180 in their top 10 defense. I mean, they got to bring some pieces in. This is defense that's talented, but they got to add some talent to really fill out that unit. But on paper, this looks like this could be a really, really big time hire for the Dolphins, who despite how the season ended or whatnot, I think there are a lot of Dolphins fans that say, hey, health permitting, we may have been in, preparing for a game in Phoenix, or I guess Glendale this weekend as well. So if you do view the Dolphins as kind of being like one step away, this is the type of move that could potentially bridge that gap between being a playoff team and a legit contender for the Super Bowl. What do you think?
I think it's a great hire because I think Vic Fangio is one of these guys, a little bit like a Wade Phillips,
Yeah.
who great defensive coordinator. He got his head coaching shot. The personnel probably not the best situation in Denver, as proven by they bring in, they traded for Russ and gave him a lot of money to start with. But maybe this is he's a guy who's going to be a great defensive coordinator, and maybe that's where he needs to be. And yeah, it's a matter of getting. I think sometimes with certain coordinators, actually a lot of coordinators, it's a matter of, does your roster fit? You want coaches to, ideally, you'd love them to be able to adjust to the roster they have, but most coaches, they have a certain thing they like to do, they have a certain way they like to play, and they have a certain type of players they like to have with that. I mean, there are a lot more, Bill Belichick's than there are Don Shula's. And as long as the Dolphins can get the kind of players that Fangio wants at each level, it's probably going to work out pretty well for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, now it's a matter of getting that roster that fits what he wants to do. And it's obviously it's a big play league. Limiting big plays is the huge thing. It's why the Dolphins on offense, they want a big play offense, because that's the kind of league it is right now, and has been really for the last like 20 years. And his defense, Fangio's defense, definitely limits things more. If it does rely on getting to the quarterback without sending extra guys. And, if you can't do that, you're gonna have a problem. Because
Yeah, doesn't matter how many guys you put back there. I mean, somebody's gonna get open eventually if
somebody's
you
gonna get open, or somebody's gonna have an illegal contact. Somebody's gonna, right. It's too hard with the way things are called, and the way, and the receivers you have running around out there. It's a little too hard to cover them for too long. So, yeah, but of the potential defensive coordinators, um, he's the best proven one that's out there. So
Yeah.
you know, good for the Dolphins. Hopefully it's a good fit for them, and it's a good fit for him.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of one of those things that seemed like it was kind of a long time coming. When McDaniel was hired last year, Vic Fangio was linked. I mean, he had just recently been let go as the Broncos head coach after 3 years. He was linked to the Dolphins. Ultimately, McDaniel decided to keep Barr and a lot of the main defensive assistants. But now they're seemingly reunited. For the 2023 season, and like you said, I mean, it's um, these definitely there's definitely a clear path that they wanted to go with the defense. So now they have to bring the guys in. I think that they probably have to bring in another safety. They're gonna have to revamp that linebacker core because there's a lot of those guys that are becoming free agents. They probably might have to add another defensive lineman depending on how you see maybe the Agba situation or some of the guys that they have there. But again, I think the pieces are in place. And I think that it might not be an overnight type of deal, but there's talent where I think that the expectation should definitely be that they're marginally better than last year when they were kind of a average, but they were like an average at best type of defense that stepped up in certain situations. I think the expectation is definitely they got to be better to kind of complement the offense that really improved. Um, so the second big coaching move that's come out since the end of the season is, and this is really the surprise so far, is the Dolphins letting go of offensive line coach Matt Applebaum. Um, he was a member of McDaniel's inaugural staff. They brought him over from Boston College, where he had the same exact position. He was kind of had the reputation of developing a lot of college offensive linemen into the pros. Really enjoyed talking with him, in press conferences and whatnot. It looked like he was doing a pretty good job this season, but obviously we saw the struggles that the offensive line had, specifically with injuries. I believe they had 9 different starting offensive line combinations, a lot of mixing and matching guys. Two of their really young offensive linemen, Austin Jackson, Liam Eichenberg, didn't really they dealt with injuries that didn't really allow them to really develop this season. So again, definitely a bit of a surprise. Um, Especially considering the injuries. I thought that they made do with guys in our lineup. For as well as Thorne Armstead played. I mean, I mean, he was in out the lineup, missed about 4 games. I mean, there's just not much you can do, and your starting left tackle is missing 4 games. Your right tackle's out for majority of the season. Your left guard's out. It's just, I mean, the only stable position that they had was center and right guard the entire year. I mean, those guys played all 17 games, I believe. So I think it's just kind of a tough position for anybody there. This is kind of one of the deals where I'm going to say, all right, given the strides that McDaniel made with this offense in year one, as much of a surprise as it is, I'm not going to question it because he did some really good things. Obviously, this continues a trend of the Dolphins not being able to retain offensive line coaches. I believe this might be like their ninth in the past decade that they're going to hire. I mean, they burnt through them. So I mean, even dating back to Brian Flores and before, they haven't been able to maintain a consistent offensive line coach. And obviously, that's probably part of the reason why offensive line has been such a sore spot for this franchise over the past decade plus. So
Why
I
did they
mean,
why did they fire him?
well, well, no, there's really no. I mean, we haven't spoken to McDaniel yet. I mean, I'm sure that that's the question that I'll be asking. When we speak to him at the combine. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, a lot of times after year one, maybe you see, a lot of times I feel like a lot of those first year changes maybe philosophical. It's like, all right, the way you're going about it. Maybe we want to get somebody in. I think that obviously they're trying. They're probably most likely. I'm 99.9% sure they're going to get somebody that's much more established and is a veteran, proven teacher and developer of NFL offensive linemen because they brought Matt Applebaum in year one. I mean, they had a lot of youth on that offensive coaching staff. Led first by McDaniel. So and Matt Applebaum was as well a first year offensive line coach in the NFL. So I'm sure that they want to get somebody to really stabilize that position because they saw, how along with the injuries, how some of the guys didn't develop at maybe the rate that they would have hoped for. They've already reportedly been interviewing some guys. I'm sure that something might come out in the coming weeks. But again, me personally, I feel like it's one of those deals where McDaniel has done so much right for the offense that I'm kind of willing to, hey, all right, if you think that it's best to go in a separate direction, all right, let's bring the new guy in and see how that goes, and then we can start to kind of criticize your decision making. I think that again on the defensive side, it was clear that Boyer could have been a one and done type of deal. I mean, it was clear that he was a holdover, and I think that in that McDaniel, I thought that I was not surprised by them getting rid of Boyer, but if they had elected to keep him, I wouldn't have been like, hey, what if I wouldn't have overly dramatically questioned it, because I do think that to an extent those injuries would have been tough for a lot of teams and a lot of coaches, a lot of defensive coordinators to overcome. So I feel like McDaniel kind of has a little bit more cachet after year one. It's like, all right, we haven't been to the playoffs since 2016. You check that box off. We made do with a crap ton of injuries, and you still were able to lead this team to the playoffs and be very, very competitive with your third string rookie quarterback. I think that gave McDaniel a lot of cachet to be like, all right, after year one, if I see some coaching staff changes that need to be made, all right, I have the leeway to do that, and maybe not get as much pushback. So obviously we got to wait and see who they bring in as the offensive line coach. But on the outside, it looks like Applebaum did a good job, but obviously McDaniel, maybe they saw that it was best to go in a different direction.
Yeah, uh, I always wonder about that when you have these 1 year one and done things, like how, are we talking personality clash? Are we talking a
It
clash of,
didn't seem it didn't seem like that. I mean,
you
again,
know,
all the guys on the offensive coaching staff, it seemed like they kind of were like the same mold. They were, teachers, maybe not the old school stereotypical kind of,
well,
yell at your
and,
back. Like they seem like they were of the same mold. So
and
maybe
maybe and I don't know, maybe that's what they need. Maybe they need a mix,
yeah.
um, and you don't have, you know, five five guys, five guys singing the same, you know, singing at the same level. That's not the Temptations. And um you need sometimes you need people who bring different things, and that's the mesh. Um so I you know, and I also think when he's coming in his first year, uh it's always tough to put together that first staff. You, you have some things in mind. You think you know what you want, and then you find out what you want during the season. And so it's, and again, you think, this guy is what you want, you like his results, but you know, maybe you find out, okay, that's what he does, or how he meshes with everybody else. It's too, you know, nah, it's just not the right mix. Um, so that was obviously a surprise. You know, the the defensive coordinator switch, not a surprise at all. I think
Yeah.
I think they needed to have, even taking injuries into account, they needed to have a great season for them to
Boy, you'd
stand
have been
back
able to, yeah,
and say, okay, fine, I'll keep the holdovers. It's, we'll stay in pat on that. But they didn't. But that was a defense that allowed them to be competitive. That allowed them to win the last regular season game and get into the playoffs, and gave them
they got them
gave
back
them
in the game. They
chances.
got them back in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, gave them chances in the playoff game when yeah, they looked like they were about to be blown out, but that's what we thought was going to happen. And then, he got him back in the game. So, um, so,
Yeah.
not surprising. So,
Yeah, we had a surprise on one side, not so much of a surprise on the defensive side. Against commission to see who they bring in to develop as the new offensive line coach, because as we said before, that's a position, or I guess a position coach that they have not been able to really nail and get a consistent developer. And we've seen the results on the offensive line the past several years. So yeah,
several decades.
so yeah, several decades. I was gonna say, yeah, several decades. Honestly, it's been a while since that's not the '70s,
Oh, good.
'70s and
I
'80s.
like they
Dolphins
really
offensive line
haven't
out there.
had they haven't had that unit really together and kind of locked down since maybe the late '90s. So yeah, this is it's like the Lions quarterbacks or something like that.
Probably shuffling somebody in.
So but
Yeah, they got to get that figured out for sure. So we'll see who they bring in this offseason. All right, we're gonna take a short break, but when we come back on the side of things, we got to talk Super Bowl. I know the Dolphins aren't in there, but we got to talk Super Bowl. Eagles, Chiefs, who you taking? We're gonna talk about all that. So stay locked with us. What's going on, everybody? Back here on the Dolphins in Depth podcast with Dave and Neil. I can't say talking all things Dolphins for the second half. I know we did in the first half, but it's Super Bowl week, so
so we ain't talking
we got to
Dolphins.
talk Super Bowl. Yeah, we got to talk Super Bowl. Obviously, Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 57. A lot of really interesting storylines. Obviously, the third Super Bowl appearance for Kansas City in 4 years. Even after trading Tyreek Hill, kind of shuffling up their roster, some of their vets uh, leaving Kansas City. Chiefs are back. They're back. I mean, that's all. That's all Patrick Mahomes right there. But obviously, he has a nice cast of guys around him. Andy Reid, obviously, at head coach. But on the other side, you've got Andy Reid's former team, the Eagles, who I believe 4 years after they knocked off the Patriots, they're back. They got a new cast. They got a new quarterback in Jalen Hurts. They got a new coach in Nick Sirianni. And they're probably one of the. I mean, they're probably the most well-rounded team during the regular season and definitely during the postseason where they've just kind of ran through the competition. So it's gonna be a really cool matchup. As I said, a lot of really cool storylines with Andy Reid facing his former team. You got the Kelsey brothers, Jason and Travis Kelsey matching up each other. One thing I wanted to ask you, being the NFL historian that you are, I'm sure as you know, it's the first ever Super Bowl matchup between two black starting quarterbacks. I just want to kind of get your thoughts. Being the historian that you are, the OG that you are. I mean, what does that mean? How significant is that?
What's it? I think we mentioned it on one of the podcasts earlier this year, kind of as a throwaway line. It's like you remember when you need to be like, when all the quarterbacks were white and straight drop back passers and everybody that's what everybody looked for. And now, nobody blinks when coming out of, you get guys coming out of college who are, so-called dual threat quarterbacks.
Yeah,
But look, let's face it, that's a term that's only applied to. It's really only applied to black quarterbacks. I mean,
yeah,
Joe Montana early in his career before his back surgery, he was what we would call today a dual threat quarterback. In the Super Bowl against the Dolphins, he ran for 59 yards and a touchdown.
yeah,
That's a dual threat quarterback when you're also throwing for 331. Um, but these kind of these quarterbacks, your quarterbacks with mobility, and quarterbacks who maybe aren't as polished a passer as you might usually want. Now teams are saying, okay, fine. Guess what? We'll work on that, and we'll get him some receivers also. And the fact that we can run the ball with this guy and use him in the running game, gee, that's because most coaches really, really would like to just run the ball well.
Yeah.
It's just like a lot fewer variables, a lot more, you don't worry as much. You get wind and snow and all this stuff. They just say, okay, fine, we run the ball. That's why coaches really want to be. That's the type of team they really want to be. What Philadelphia is now, and Philadelphia is as so-called old school traditional as any team in the league right now. That's the kind of team most coaches would prefer, just
Mm.
because it's just fewer headaches. And also, Jim Brown had a great stretch, kind of wrote in one of his books. He said it's a game of mental and physical domination. He said, and when you run the ball well, that's physical domination because you're kicking their butt, and it's mental domination because they know you're kicking their butt. He said, hey, give me a team that can run the ball and play defense. He said, I can coach them, to the Super Bowl. And so you see, like in the situations of Jalen Hurts, who wasn't that bad a passer, but he's definitely gotten better. And you look at
Mm-hmm.
Chicago, like a Justin Fields, they're not talking about ditching, nobody with any sense is talking about ditching Justin Fields. They're like,
It's
okay,
talking about enhancing, making use of that running ability and
right,
building him up as a passer. Yeah.
right. And so as we're in this era now, and it's interesting that because we're in this era and because that's how the position has evolved,
Mm-hmm.
that it it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah,
It's a prerequisite for the position almost. Like you have
right.
to
And
be able to. Yeah.
now we're at this point, and now it's kind of like, oh yeah, this this seems like just an inevitability almost.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem like this came out of as much out of maybe nowhere, or this just kind of seems like, oh yeah, okay, well, let's yeah, we figured, you got Russ Wilson, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Deshaun Watson before things went haywire with him. It was kind of like, okay, yeah, you figured this was going to happen. I
Mm-hmm.
I remember in 2004 when you got to the championship games, or the NFC championship game rather, and it was Mike Vick and Donovan McNabb.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal because your dominant quarterback, and Dante Culpepper had a great season also. But your dominant quarterbacks, are still, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. That was kind of what people still thought. Ben Roethlisberger was a rookie and having a great year, and here's Eli Manning coming as a rookie. Philip Rivers. So the fact that you had Vic and McNabb, I think that was the first time two black quarterbacks played in a conference championship game. That actually seemed like a bigger deal than this does, because it seemed
It's
like,
almost seemed inevitable at this point. Like with
yeah, yeah, it was like, oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah, yeah, huh, because somebody was going to make it out. It just that's just how it feels. Um,
Yeah.
it and like I say, that NFC Championship game with McNabb and Vic seemed like so much more of a kind of a sea change where you're going, are we looking at something of the future? Is there something happening here? And then, when you start to see the pendulum swing, you get a Cam Newton. After that, you get RG3 picked high in the draft. Okay, didn't have his career didn't go completely the way everybody thought, but look where he was taken again.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of quarterback, you knew going in, this guy, he's not just going to be about, throwing for 300. He might burn you for 100 also on the ground. And that, as that sea change has happened, they say this comes like, okay, yeah, well, when you look around, and it's, how many black quarterbacks do you have in the league right now?
Yeah.
Pretty fair number. So it's kind of like, okay, sooner or later, you're going to have, two of them are going to meet in the Super Bowl. It's like I say, it doesn't. It just feels like, okay, inevitability. Um, and I think it's an evolution that you know we saw starting kind of back in that back in '04 when you had Culpepper, Vic, and McNabb, who were all mobile guys. And Culpepper and McNabb were obviously better passers than Vic, and more able to work from the pocket than Vic, and McNabb better than Culpepper. But like I say, this seems like, okay, this is the end of that train. And I don't think we're still I don't think there's a thing anymore about, a black quarterback or a dual threat quarterback, or, I mean, even when Vince Young came out, there was can that can that kind of quarterback win a Super Bowl? Can he lead a team to the Super Bowl? I mean, now nobody asks that. If you got Vince Young coming out today, everybody be like, him.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
That's our guy. That's our guy. That's our guy. So it's definitely a difference in how the game's played, how things are viewed.
Yeah, that's the big one, like
Yeah.
the perception. Because I remember when I was covering the Ravens, a couple years back. Obviously I covered the Mars MVP season, and I wrote a story about how I believe that was the 100th. That may have been the 100th season, or maybe it was the year before. But they, I wrote a story on how I think that season, like we had the most black quarterbacks up to that point. We had the most black starting quarterbacks that like began the season of leading teams. And I spoke to Doug Williams and Mike Vick about kind of like the general progression of the black quarterback, where there was a time where you had Chuck Harris and you had a whole bunch of quarterbacks, black players that weren't even allowed, essentially weren't even allowed to play quarterback. It was
Right.
like, nah, you're going to wide receiver, you're going to cornerback, you're going to running back. And then you have that change over time in the perception and the views of black athletes, black quarterbacks, where not only are front offices saying like, all right, these guys can play quarterback, but like they're actually like building around them, and the game has shifted where like their ability to run and their athleticism isn't maybe viewed as like a negative. Like
Right.
it's a plus.
Exactly.
It's a plus. And you've seen that with the way that the Eagles have built around Jalen Hurts, where they're like it's like, all right, we're gonna embrace that. We're gonna really embrace that, and we're gonna use that to elevate our offense. So I know they spoke about it as well. They've been asked about it the past 2 weeks, and they said it's great for representation. It's great that that the perception has changed, and that 4, 5, 6 year olds can see us in that position and say, all right, like I want to do that too. Because there was a time where a lot of black athletes were like, hey, I'm gonna just go to wide receiver. That's the only way I'm gonna get on the field.
And I mean, when you have, Dak Prescott's been the Dallas Cowboys quarterback for a while, and we're
Yeah,
talking feel free, not a wow, but a few years, and that's as much a glamour position in the
as any.
NFL as
Yeah,
there is. And that's what he's, he's a quarterback who can throw, he can run, and that's what he has been. Yeah, that's
yeah.
what he was in college. That's what he's been in Dallas. And yeah, the it's interesting how the so-called dual threatness is not seen as a minus now. It's like, okay, wait a minute, yeah, wait a minute, that kind of does work, and especially if we and the way the evolutions of the offense is also when
Yeah,
you're talking the zone reads and all that stuff.
spread
um,
stuff, or you gotta be able to move. Yeah,
right, and it's what everybody's doing and how everybody's what everybody's doing coming out of college, and it kind of was like, okay, wait a minute, you kind of need to be that. I have a hard time thinking about a quarterback today just being a straight drop passer. I mean, it just
I mean, the
it's
Tom
really
Brady's there's way more Jalen Hurtses and Lamar Jacksons coming into the NFL than
right.
Tom Brady's. I'm not
And
saying that they move exactly like Jalen Hurts, but they're more skewed to that type of
right,
quarterback
and
in terms of
there's
attributes.
you have to there's the ability to do that, even if you don't necessarily want to. And um yeah, I mean, the quarterbacks who aren't particularly good at that, you've seen them have, you've seen them have you see them have some struggles coming into the league, or there seems to be a ceiling on where they go. I mean, but no, I mean, it's a great thing. I think it's a great thing. It's a nice thing, and representation matters. It's great to see it,
Yeah.
but I do think it feels very inevitable. Like I have, if you're a young, if you're when Doug Williams was the first black quarterback to start a Super Bowl, if you were a young black kid and you looked at the NFL, you had doubts to whether they would accept you as a quarterback. I mean, we weren't that far from Warren Moon, who was tearing up the league. Warren Moon didn't get drafted. Okay.
Yeah.
So we
Had to
weren't
go
that
to a
far
whole
from
different
him.
league. He had to go to a whole different league before he got a chance.
Yeah. He had to go
Yeah.
tear up another league.
Yeah.
win 5 straight titles there, and then come in and which actually kind of worked out well for him because he made a lot of money in Houston. But you know, you couldn't look at the NFL and say, okay, wait a minute, they're going to give me a fair shot. And I think now, if you are that dual threat quarterback in high school, you say, hey, I can take this game and improve and refine it to the college level.
Mm-hmm.
And if I improve and refine it some more, I can take it to the NFL, and the NFL will be receptive if I'm good enough.
Yeah.
And that's not something that maybe could have been said years
30.
ago.
Yeah.
But and maybe a little more so, a little more receptive 10 years ago, obviously. Like I say, you had Cam Newton coming in and doing his thing. And, Russ came in 2012 and played the game his way and, did what he did. RG3 was drafted in 2012. So yeah, it's really been like an evolution that you've seen over the last decade.
Yeah.
And so cool. Yeah. It's, among those things you
Definitely.
see it's sort of like a black president. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, get out of here. We're not seeing that. Like, but
That's definitely one of the many cool moments and kind
so
of
so so
cool
you so
storylines.
so who you like in this game?
Oh man, yeah, I was gonna say we got to get out of here real quick, but I'm gonna take the Eagles. I think that they're the more well-rounded team. I just think that they're gonna be able to run the ball well. I don't know. I feel like this leans more of a high-scoring game. I think that they're gonna be able to run the ball well. They're gonna be able to throw the ball. And that defense is good. That Eagles defense is good. They can rush the passer. They got guys in the back end. Um, but it's like you just can never count Mahomes out. You just can't. But I'm gonna do it this time. I think that we kind of saw that path to victory a couple years back. Obviously, it was a little different when they played Tampa Bay a couple years back because Mahomes' offensive line was like decimated. But I think that this defensive line from Philly is good enough to really give Mahomes trouble. He doesn't have a Tyree. I know the guys that he has at wide receiver, they've been stepping up. But Hardman's out. They got some injuries there. They don't have a Tyreek guy that's really going to stress the defense. I'm gonna take Philly in like a 3-point game, maybe like a 28-25 type of game. What about you?
This is actually reminding me of Tampa a couple years ago, where you looked up and down the roster and or the matchups, and you went, there's not a lot of them that favor Kansas City.
Yeah.
And as good as Kansas City is, and as good as Mahomes is, and as much as you've seen them like come from 20 points down in the playoffs and everything, this doesn't look good. And also, it's also I think when this matchup of the great offense and the number one offense against the number one defense, I think we've got the third matchup of that.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go well for the offense. It hasn't gone well for the offense at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually winds up a route for the defense. And I think that's a similar matchup. The Eagles can run the ball. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. Kansas City is not going to be able to run the ball, and that's going to make them very one-dimensional. And they're going to get even more one-dimensional if the Eagles get up and score on their first drive. And I would not be surprised if like the Eagles defense like breaks Mahomes at some point, like they broke those San Francisco quarterbacks. And I like Philly pretty solid in this one. I'm gonna go 35-17.
Oof, man.
Yeah, I don't like this matchup at all for Kansas City. Uh, and the Eagles have been the best team all year. I don't know that they're a great team. I remember at one point earlier this year, I said they kind of remind me a little bit of the 72 Dolphins, where that whole season there, people were like, yeah, but
Like they were just handling business. Like
right. And then it was
yeah.
just, then you look back and you went, well, daggone, you know, yeah. You finally got to the last game and you're like, well, wait a minute, maybe they are the best, they are the best team, and they are the most well-rounded team. I think they lost one game when Jalen Hurts started.
Yeah, 16-1 with Hurts as a starter.
Yeah. 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 They're very well rounded, and I think they're going to get after Mahomes in a way that's going to not rattle him, but it's going to make things a lot easier on the back end for Philly. And they're strong on, I think, on all levels. So yeah, I think Kansas City is a very, very good team. They're a very, very good team year in and out. It's a very good 5-year stretch for them. But for that, that guy lined up an offside in the AFC Championship game in 2018. I think they could have had 2 Super Bowls in 18 and 19. But yeah, same feeling as going to that Tampa game a couple years ago. Don't like the matchup. Think the better team's on the other side. So
All right, so we're both rolling with the Eagles this
yeah.
Sunday. I gotta ask again before we get out, how excited are you for the halftime show? We got Rihanna. She's pretty much been like in the dark past couple years. She's coming back doing a halftime show. You excited? Are you not? You feeling Riri? Or you like nah? I need somebody else.
No. I'm kind of happy they stopped going with like the people from my generation. It's like, come
Yeah,
on, man. I'm happy they moved it up a little bit.
yeah. They got Jay
To
Z
be
in there.
honest.
He's getting a contemporary artist.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah.
I
They
got
have
tired of
Bruno Mars and
I-
Beyonce a couple years back. They getting there right now.
yeah. I like them doing moving forward, and I don't know if I'm excited about the halftime show. I'm okay with it. I mean, I'll probably sit and watch it. But I generally don't get excited about halftime.
You feel like you strike me as someone that like what was your favorite halftime show? This you strike me as like you're gonna say like Prince or somebody like that.
I like really like yeah, love
Everyone loved Prince.
yeah, I
Yeah,
love Prince. Prince was great, and obviously in the rain, Purple Rain, all that. That was really
yeah.
good. Um, uh, Bruno Mars, and who else was with him?
I think he brought Beyonce out, didn't he? Did he bring Beyonce out? Was
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
Super Bowl 50, I think, or was it?
yeah. That was 50. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
I like that one. I like that one.
I'm a
And,
Beyonce. I'm a Beyonce. Beyonce got the best one in my opinion. She shut down the lights in New Orleans. So as far as I'm concerned, that's the best Super Bowl halftime show ever. I don't think it's going to be topped.
the, the,
That's just
you
me.
you were just happy because the Ravens were kicking the 49ers butts all over
Oh
the
man,
field. Then
no, I was enjoying the
you
halftime show.
you probably you could have had like someone out there with a ukulele, and you'd be like, oh, that's the best halftime show ever.
That's funny. That's funny. Nah, Beyonce did her thing. So it
Uh,
should be a good one too with
the
Rihanna.
one here a couple years ago, with was it Shakira and
Oh, I think there was a lot of mixed views on that one. I think it
I
had
see.
Black Eyed
I
Peas
liked it.
or
I liked it.
yeah.
I was fine with it. I know there were some people who were, oh, it's too much. I was like,
It's either. I mean, I feel like whoever does it every year, it's always like half the people love it, half the people hate it. So you just kind of
yeah.
whatever. If you like it,
I,
you like it. If you don't,
yeah.
you don't.
I just like I said, I got tired of the, oh, we're going out the Rolling Stones. Like, oh, come on. really? Stop. The halftime show should not look like the top 25 list on my playlist, most played on my iPod. No, no. Really shouldn't. Let's be more current. Let's get
contemporary
let's
artists.
get
Let's
yeah.
get
Let's
the.
get,
I mean,
yeah.
they got to cater to the young folks anyway. Because the
Right,
young
like
folks are coming up, so they got to cater to them.
like when they had Michael Jackson in '92, Mike was still he was
Yeah,
still,
yeah,
he was still cranking out hits. That was
for sure.
okay. Oh, whoa, that's what that got everybody's attention. That's what you need, like that. Yeah, let's do that. It's the Super Bowl. Let's come that strong at halftime. That's cool. So yeah.
I'm excited. I haven't seen Rihanna in forever. She hasn't dropped music in a while, so it should be a fun one. Should be a fun game. Definitely gonna be a fun week. I'm enjoying myself out here. Got plenty of stories coming. One that actually is posted. To Christopher Columbus High alum, Josh Jobe of the Eagles and Deion Bush of the Chiefs. First time that Columbus alum have met in the Super Bowl. Got a couple players that have made it to the big game in years past, but the first time that two are facing off. I wrote a story about that, so definitely check that out. Got a bunch of stories coming up from Roger Goodell's press conference on Wednesday. A whole bunch of other stuff happening this week. So definitely stay tuned to Miami Herald. As David said, subscribe to Miami Herald. Check that out throughout the week. Yeah, definitely pumping out a bunch of stories. So I'm just trying to make the most of this opportunity and have fun out here. Well, that brings us to the end of
And
another
I will
edition.
also, I'm
Yep.
going to try, folks. I'm going
Go
to try
ahead.
to update my Super Bowl history. That's on
Okay.
our site. We have like 2 or 3 versions of it. Super Bowl history, game by game, every
Yep.
single Super Bowl. I'm going to update it, and because I've skipped it, I think the last 2 years or 3 years, just because I was tired. And but we're going to update that, and yeah, so settle, something you can use to amuse yourself and settle a lot of arguments.
We got it all at the Miami Herald. I mean, what more can you say? We got it all for you.
All right.
Cool, cool. Well, as always, enjoy the rest of the week, enjoy the game, and we will be back again to recap Dolphins football. We can't recap Dolphins football, but discuss Dolphins football.
Again? Next week?
Hey, if the Dolphins drop some news, we'll be here to recap it. But until then, you guys take care.
I got to do, man. It's Valentine's Day.